From the Marquee Media Studio inside Mark Tank, it's the Mark Haney Show.
All right, we are today having the pleasure of meeting SC Moatti, and she is a thought leader, a venture capitalist, and knows a lot about entrepreneurship and venture capital and building products and what makes a great product. And so we're going to learn some of that today. We're here at GFX, so we're kind of in a remote location, but I think it's going to be a fun conversation, and expect to be educated. I expect to be educated because you're obviously brilliant. You graduated and taught at Stanford. Maybe give us a little bit of your background and how you became this expert and thought leader.
Well, it's great to be here, and I love the energy that you brought to the conference. It's just so inspiring. I really, I appreciate that very much. So I grew up in Paris and graduated electrical engineering there, and then right after I moved to get my MBA at Stanford. And then, I was really lucky, I will say. I was early in mobile. I worked at Tango and Nokia. I was really early in social. I was at Facebook or Meta, and was invited to write a book on what makes a great product, which was daunting, to be honest, but also kind of a fun thing to do because it got me talking to hundreds of my peers at the time, other product leaders. And that led to the start of a nonprofit that I now chair called Products That Count, which today, if you fast forward almost 9 years, engages 500,000 product managers across industry and geography. And so that's a huge part of what I love to do. Like, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to talk to product people, and they're
But you're giving back in an area that is, I wouldn't have thought a nonprofit would be, because that sounds like a for-profit kind of operation in my mind.
Well,
but maybe you decide to make it a nonprofit.
Think about it this way. All of the programming of the nonprofit is free. So for product people who essentially are folks who don't necessarily have a technical background, but they want to be in tech, we're giving them a path to build a career in technology. And it's life-changing for most of them, right? So all that free programming, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people build a career in technology. And all the programming is given away for free, thanks to the support of partners like Mighty Capital, my firm, but also Capgemini and Walmart and Johnson & Johnson and Cisco, who make it possible for everyone to learn how to build great products.
Hundreds of thousands of people, I imagine. You're from the Bay Area now, you're in San Francisco. You help people be outside of Silicon. Obviously, you're here in Sacramento helping us, but how do you help people, that kind of quantity of people?
Yes, and that's a great question. When I started the organization, it was before COVID, and so it was mostly a Silicon Valley thing. But then COVID really changed everything. And to give you a few data points, before COVID, very few Fortune 1000 had a chief product officer. And in 3 years, that number went from like 3-4% to 40% in 2024. So massive increase. And the reason is marketing loves the voice of the customer. Engineering, especially now with AI, is also, or IT, is also having increasing budgets, decreasing staff, because every company is going through digital transformation, and so you need somebody that's going to drive technology, but with an understanding of the business priorities, and that's really the definition of product. So that's one key factor: the number of chief product officer, and then the number of product managers in any team that has 2 years or less of experience. That's 3 out of 4. So that's how fast
I had no idea that function had expanded. So you're in the right spot.
And it's cross industry, cross geography. Right now, it's no longer just Silicon Valley. So there's a ton of product managers. I actually met some of them at your conference today, but they're everywhere. They're across the U.S., across the world, really, and across industries also.
Is there a framework for what makes a great product? So I'll just throw that at you. What makes a great product? I mean, you sort of know when you know as a user. I use the iPhone. I feel like it's a great product, but I really haven't used everything else. But it's obviously caught fire, so it must be good. But what is it about it, that kind of thing, that makes it so special?
Yes, that's a great question. And what you described, which is we know it when we know it, is actually exactly what it is. So, and how you unpack that, I believe that, one thing I've learned across all these now tens of thousands of conversations is technology is an extension of ourselves. So when we think what makes a great product, we have to think what makes a great person.
Oh.
So I use the mind, body, spirit framework to describe that with, mind, we all want to learn. So we expect that our technology is going to learn with us. Body, we all want to do good. So we expect that our technology is going to be beautiful, and it's a lot more than pretty pictures. And then spirit, we all want to have meaningful lives. So we expect that our technology is going to be meaningful, and by that I mean personalized, but also protecting our privacy. So there's just a lot to it that's essentially, when you think about, like, especially in this AI era, technology is actually so connected to us, right? It's like it's blending. And so the definition of a great product is very similar to the definition of a great person.
Can you walk me through, like, maybe a case study of somebody that had a product, sounded good, but the user experience was not good, and then they made adjustments and possibly pivoted at some level, and it became great?
I'll give you a couple of small examples. The first one is a very well-known company that we invested in, Airbnb. They have a wish list feature. And that wish list, when it started, it was like a star. So have you used Airbnb before?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we own some rental properties, and so we're on both sides. Every once in a while, I'll do an Airbnb with my wife, and then we have properties.
Yeah, so that's actually how I started too. I supervised on Airbnb. I got to know the founders, so their wish list was a star. So a star is very rational, right? It's like, well, if the time is right, and the price is right, and I'm in the neighborhood, and I need it, and I'm gonna go. And then they changed that star to a heart. And a heart is like, I just love this place.
Oh.
Right? The number of houses on the wish list jumped 30% because I love this.
That's incredible.
The price doesn't matter.
The heart versus the star was a enormous differentiator.
So simple, right?
Oh,
that's just a small example of, like, learning about, like, beautiful products. For example, they have to have a lot of efficiency, but they have to have a wow factor that is kind of skipping, the brain. And then, on the efficiency side, OpenAI is a great example of that, right? Like, OpenAI is parsing through, I don't even know how many by now, like by the time people are watching this, billions of data sets, articles and research papers and notes and language. And then you ask them a super simple question, like, can I write this better? Or what's the piece of code that this is going to, that is going to solve this problem? And within seconds, you get, like, a really well-structured, simple answer, right? So it's bringing order out of chaos, which is that efficiency factor. That's another example of a beautiful product.
Oh, okay. So thinking about the long term, or maybe the trend here, are products generally, because of stuff like AI and because of the training that you do and the learnings that people have, do you think products are just going to exponentially improve in quality?
I think so too, yes. The vision for the organization is that everyone uses products that count, like great products. But if you think about, like, right now we're at the dawn of a new AI era. And so generally the problem solved will start with costs, right? I'm going to take an example of movies. I think the movie industry is primed for disruption with AI. So at first it's like the designer that's going to be able to animate a character much faster, right? So it's a cost problem that's being solved. Then it moves to productivity. It's like the producer that's able to assemble all the different characters and produce the movie much more effectively. It's a lot more complex than just a designer optimizing a character. It's an orchestration problem. And then the third step is a revenue problem. And I'll give you an example, and I don't know if that's going to be the problem, the solution for movies, but you and I, when we consume movies today, it's so constraining, right? We have to be stuck for 4 hours or 10 times 1 hour when we watch the series. And we have to pay by the movie or pay by the month. But the truth is, hey, I have 10 minutes. Show me a movie that has George Clooney and Emma Thurman and whatever. And that's going to be on this topic, and that's going to just be like for me, right? Based on what I know. That's a whole different way to consume movies, right? And that's something that AI possibly could do one day. So that's a revenue problem. And generally, like when we have big waves of innovation, we start with cost, then we go to productivity, then we go to revenue.
A friend of mine yesterday was talking about an investment he was considering, and this opens up maybe a couple of things that we can talk about, but maybe not. So I want to talk more about the technology, but that people are using AI and these pictures of people dancing, women in this particular case, and they're very, very real, and AI gives them a personality, and they become your like your girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And we're like, the conversation went sort of sideways about this is crazy, what kind of person would do that? But in society today, people are becoming more lonely, and especially maybe the men, young men, and that they will end up with friends online, female friends online, and that will greatly affect the world if we don't have as many physical relationships.
Yes. So, a couple of reactions on this. First of all, I don't know the particular example, but if we riff on it, right? When you think about the arc we were on, 10, 20 years ago, we only had physical identities, right? When you and I wanted to talk, we could pick up the phone and talk, or we could go see each other. Now we have physical and digital identities. Like you and I could stay in touch by I'm watching your post on LinkedIn and you're watching mine, and you have a certain identity on LinkedIn and I have a certain identity on LinkedIn. It's part of me, but it's not quite me. It's part of you, but it's not quite you. And that's just I call that a 2D identity because it's video now. It used to be just text. But if you think about this could actually be a 3D identity where we're in a virtual world, right? So AR, VR, then having an AI maybe is not as surprising because we already know we're in an artificial world. And so the AI may be behaving in ways that would feel a little awkward in the real world, but in a world where we already expect that it's artificial, maybe that AI is actually more real.
Yeah.
And so when you think about one of the ways that AI can really manifest is it gets us to spend even more time in the virtual world, but in great ways, right? In ways that are more immersive, where we feel better. And I do think that a lot of the issues we have right now, like the health crisis, mental health, obesity crisis, diabetes crisis, they could actually accelerate the transition into virtual worlds because in a way our physical bodies are constraining more than our virtual ones.
So you could have, so I'm just thinking out loud here, but the people can develop a fantasy friend, if you will, that made them feel good about themselves, maybe their weight or their physical condition, and ultimately that helped cure their depression. Is that where we're going with it?
In many ways,
okay.
Yes. So when entrepreneurs ask me what problems can I solve with AI, my recommendation is tackle big ones. And the three big ones: loneliness, drug discovery, and self-driving cars. I think these are three massive problems. And the problem of loneliness, you mentioned, a virtual friend, or I think you might have said imaginary friend. I think it's your own identity that's going to be. If for you and I, when we grew up, our physical identity is 80% and digital is 20. For today's generation, maybe it's 50-50. Maybe for the next generation, it'll be 20 physical, 80 virtual, right? Because then my body doesn't really constrain me in a virtual world.
And in that, so do you imagine that people will have friends with, I want to have a friend that's a celebrity, maybe Jennifer Aniston. I want Jennifer Aniston as a friend. My wife would
Or Mozart.
Yeah, or Abraham Lincoln or something like that. That's interesting. You got a tough question. I read the book by Abraham Lincoln one time that it was about how he made decisions, and I read it a long time ago, so I don't really remember it. But I always thought to myself, boy, if I could ask Abraham Lincoln, how to handle this difficult problem, he would be a good person, or Jesus. You'd be, who would I ask? So, wow.
So, yes, you could have that kind of magical, timeless experience, and that's pretty cool, right? Like some people will start to say, oh, it's creepy because I'm going to have a virtual girlfriend and I'm a dork or I'm quirky. But in fact, like you could have dinner with, Julius Caesar, Jesus, Mozart, you and I, and that would be kind of a cool experience.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay, so you mentioned two other verticals, if you will. You mentioned self-driving cars So
drug discovery.
The drug discovery, that didn't. I'm struggling with that one. Yeah.
What I'm thinking here. When you think about the types of problems AI can solve, it's problems that are really complex, right? So drug discovery is exactly that. It takes a PhD to understand how a drug is created, and it takes an army of PhD to try and formulate new drugs.
Yes.
But when you think about like, hey, maybe an AI could essentially empower these PhDs to go much faster. The speed of drug discovery, the speed of experimentation with drugs would be so much greater.
And we are actually invested in a company that uses AI to formulate their product for their drugs. It's a women's health product. Yeah, she's here today. In fact,
I would love to meet her.
Oh, okay. I'll make sure we connect you up because she's a wonderful person. I'm sure you would hit it off. Okay, so then the self-driving cars. What? Obviously, that's upon us.
It's coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So what? Can you walk me through what self-driving car might be like? Let's call it 10, 20 years from now.
Well, if you think about today, we essentially have like Waymo, right? And that's really in San Francisco and a few other pockets, nowhere else. And what these cars are doing is they're like a one unit in their wide world, trying to navigate from point A to point B. Now imagine that instead of cars, we all have like little units that essentially act like mini trains, right? So I hook up to like the train that's going right and everybody's going this. All of a sudden, my transportation method and my person are kind of one and the same almost. And I can go places much faster and much safer, because what happens is when it's a one to many problem, right? Like one self-driving car to big complex environment, it's a certain degree of complexity. But when it's like a many to many problem and it's like city regulation, and it's like, well, if I'm going to a meeting, and what happens to my self-driving car? Like, is it just going around the block until I'm, ready to go back? Or, how does this work? At a city planning level, it becomes really complex. And so that level of complexity, an AI can solve effectively, as opposed to where we are today, where we have, LiDARs and radars on the car, but it's just a problem that's solved for this one car.
Well, that's really interesting to kind of extrapolate how these things might play out, and the speed that we're learning it's rapidly increasing. Is that a fair statement? How do you put a math problem to the speed of the improvement that AI is about to delivering and about to deliver? Aren't we accelerating the speed of learning?
Yes. So I do agree that right now, the speed of innovating is incredible. It's faster than I've seen since the beginning of the mobile era, which is kind of where I grew up. And it's so inspiring and so exciting. For entrepreneurs to be successful, they have to, most of them, be serial entrepreneurs like Todd, because otherwise they just have to learn the game and play it at the same time. It's really complex. But at the same time, I believe that the speed of innovation is actually slower than during the mobile era.
Oh, interesting.
And that's because, AI is solving problems that are order of magnitude more complex, that are order of magnitude more immersive than the mobile era. And so if you look, I know it's very simplified math, but if you look at kind of the key moments in the mobile era, you have IBM Simon, at the beginning of the mid-90s. Uh-huh. Then you have Nokia, Motorola, about 6 years later, the first smartphone. And then 6 years later, you have the first iPhone, where the revolution really takes off. Mm-hmm. And when you compare that with AI, you have IBM as well, always early to market, IBM Watson. And then 13 years later, you have OpenAI. And then I think in 13 years, if you follow the simple math, right, but still farther than the mobile cycles, you'll have something that is really going to make the industry take off, like AI at scale, mainstream, accepted by everyone, and most likely creating massive industries.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you're a venture capitalist as well. We're talking a lot about product, and I have to imagine that your brain, right, your understanding of all this and your team is such a benefit to somebody that you invest into? Because we always try to add value as venture capitalists. We make a lot of connections and things like that at the Growth Factory. But that kind of superpower in terms of knowledge of product, it's got to give you a superpower as a venture capitalist.
Yes, that's really what makes us unique. And so we bring some of that vision, which, I can't take credit for. I haven't built product myself in like a decade. So I think you mentioned on stage, we're here to listen. I've become a great listener of all these amazing product people that are innovating across industry and geography. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to kind of picture their world and say, oh, this is what it's going to look like, right? So that's one thing. But the real value of our network to our portfolio company is that it's essentially a marketplace. It's a marketplace of customers because product managers are the buyers of technology products across most industry. It's a marketplace of talent, of course, and then it's a marketplace of acquirers. And we have portfolio companies that have gotten millions of dollars in revenue, key talent in product, and an acquirer in our portfolio.
Okay, very interesting. So when you, I guess, look at a founder to invest in, we were talking about one that you were going to look at that we are invested into. We invested in the founders, and I'm sure you do at some level too, in a big way. The product matters a lot, but we invest into people. What makes so we talked a little bit about what makes a great product, but what makes a great entrepreneur?
Yes, so that's really, obviously that's the key, right? The team is the key. So when we look at a team, we look at, is it a high performing team? When it's a founding team, whether it's a single founder with a management team or a set of co-founders, we want to see three things. We want to see complementary skill set. We want to see compatible communication style, and we want to see comparable appetite for risk. And for us, that's like a really key factor. Now, the founder itself, most of the time, we like people who are serial entrepreneurs, especially right now because things go so fast. People who are super capital efficient. Every dollar is like they treat like it's their own and want to build big companies. And the visions, and that's one of the things I love, right? Every time I'm trying to, almost like immerse myself into their head and try to understand like how is the world different after their company is massively successful. And once I see that world, usually then I want to invest because I want that world to come through.
Where did that heart come from? You're such your personality says it, but also your actions say it. You're giving back in a big way. But venture capital is a business of helping other people to succeed. But even with the nonprofit and the way you're very selfless about your approach, where did that come from? Does that come from your mom? We were talking about your mom a little bit earlier. It sounds like she was sort of a tough cookie. And how did you develop that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has sort of the way that they build their own vision, right? So for me, as starting the firm, just like for you, my vision is a world that is, collaborative and it's a better world, right? And when we look at today, we're in a world that's very divided and in a world that, has a huge amount of inequalities. And I think a lot of people are asking themselves, like, how do I get rich, right? Mm-hmm. And when I think about what does it mean to be rich, I think it's about contributing, right? If I'm rich, then it means I'm contributing a lot, right? I have a lot to contribute. And so whether it's my money, my knowledge, it is less important than do I actually, just like you, right? How can I help? Do I actually, am I of service to people?
Thank you. Yeah, I grew up about 2 minutes from here. And I remember asking my mom, are we rich? And she was like, Mark, we're rich in love. Mom, are we rich? We're rich in love. And I grew up and I realized later that we weren't rich at all. We had the railroad running through our backyard, right? Rose was a railroad town. But those early lessons, I think, kind of shape who we are. And I feel like we all have that somewhere in us. If we can sort of tap into that, we can make the world a better place. Okay, so we
on
have,
that,
yes.
I'll share something. I've started this practice recently, talking about like, why we do what we do, of looking back at my younger self, right? Like, and of like a lot of different ages, like the kid, the growing up, the young adult, and so on. And thinking, I every time I grow, just like I think everybody who's so hard on themselves, I grow out of a certain state in my life, and I'm like, why was I thinking things this way, right? And
I'm doing that from yesterday.
And I've started to practice and say, try to be actually gentle to that person that you don't necessarily recognize. And it's been really helpful to think about like, hey, they actually worked really hard to make you be who you are today.
Yeah. They stumbled a little bit, but it was tough. So that's interesting. Okay, so what did so we wrap up here a little bit. What did I not ask you that you think would be really interesting for us, and maybe just any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love to learn about new products. I love to meet new people who are visionaries, and so really happy to connect with anybody who's watching this. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so one great way to engage with me is, follow or invite me on LinkedIn. And then I post a short video, like a minute or two, almost every day. Okay. And so let's have a conversation.
I'm gonna connect or follow her whenever I do on LinkedIn. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for everything. Such giving back to the entrepreneurs and helping the Sacramento's backyard advantage. Ultimately, the backyard advantage. It would be great if there was a backyard advantage everywhere. Communities would rally like they are beginning to do here in Sacramento. And you are helping us make that happen.
Yourself.
Yes, got to get out of my own way. But I got a great team, so I thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at HaneyBiz, we are always by your side.